Yeah, we acquiesce that power, especially around things that we find difficult. We give it to somebody else to be responsible for, without really stepping back and saying, "Now what?"
Welcome to Diversity Dish, where we're dishing on everything diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice related. My name is Sedruola Maruska, and we're bridging the gap between what needs to be said and what needs to be heard. Those individual experiences that are often ignored or simply dismissed. Sometimes I'm dining alone, sometimes I'm dining with friends, and sometimes I'm dining a la carte. No matter how I'm dining, it promises to be delicious. Let's dig in. Dr. Ian Brooks is the CEO and founder of Rhodes Smith Consulting, a personal and professional development firm specializing in behavioral transformations. He's also the author of Intention, Building Capabilities to Transform Your Story. For over 24 years, Dr. Brooks' career has taken him from working in a clinical ward to organizations and people, with the goal of helping individuals build skills toward achieving new heights. His clients include Netflix, Shondaland, Bank of America, Guitar Center, Nike Inc., Sony, and Warner Brothers. His passion for working with individuals seeking expansion and leaders within organizations to develop key skills toward navigating their organizations and working with their teams to build on the mastery of intentions and consistency of capabilities. All right, welcome back to Diversity Dish. I'm so glad you decided to join us again because my guest today is Ian Brooks, and that is Dr. Ian Brooks to you, right? Ian, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Sedruola. Wonderful to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And I think we're going to have a good conversation today.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into that, the crux or the meat and potatoes, as I like to say, since we are on Diversity Dish,
Yes.
I want to know from you, what are you most passionate about right now?
I think about this every morning, and it's something that I, would really anchor myself on, and that is, how am I contributing back to society? I'm passionate about, number one, giving not something away, although thought leadership could be defined as someone giving something away for free, but really the contributions that we make as humans and as we make as individuals to those around us, to our societies. It's something that's I'm really starting to explore a lot more of. And I think it fits into the narrative of, one, what I write about, but secondly, some of the trends of people re-anchoring themselves on their authenticity and doing what they're passionate about. And so one of the things that I wake up every morning thinking about is, how am I living towards that priority and that passion of giving back and being seen and being heard in ways that I may have restricted myself, be it consciously or unconsciously, and helping others along that journey. And so that's something that I'm truly passionate about now.
I love it. Well, then you and I are two peas in a pod, I think, because I am all about it. I know that you have written a book, which is called Intention. And so we're definitely going to be talking about intention because that is something that I am also very passionate about. But from what you just said, you talked about authenticity, passion, being seen, being heard, and all of those things are wrapped up into exactly what it is that I do and that, I too am passionate about. So I love it. So how do you feed that which you are passionate about right now?
Right. Well, I think that I feed it in a couple ways. The first being, number one, making sure I'm true to it. Right. So just because it doesn't necessarily need to take the same shape and form every single day, or it's not something that takes up my entire 24 hours, but it is something that I'm conscious about, knowing that if that's my passion, if that's really what I'm focused on and pursuing and doing and living, now I need to be able to consciously make choices in that respect.
Yeah.
The second piece to that is to say, more tactically speaking, and for me, that's getting out there and having that voice heard, is participating in something such as this, such as a podcast, something that I normally would not be doing historically, or based on my own fears and judgments, based on my previous career as a clinician, where you're taught not to say anything, and you're taught to listen all the time, which is definitely needed in that profession.
Yeah.
And even growing up that way, right? Hey, you're not talking to you.
Right.
So hey, get fit right in, believe me. And now progressing some 40 some odd years later, it's a function of how to, taking that liberty and saying, okay, what am I really talking about? And how am I contributing to society in that respect, and sharing what I know and my experiences to help others? Also, in that respect, how well am I listening each day? How well am I educating myself on others and hearing what they have to say? Not because I need to, but because I want to. Want is about a choice. I need air to breathe. So that's
right. No choices there.
Right. And sometimes we confuse and combine our wants and our needs. Yep. But truly, when I'm passionate about contributing to society, it also means that I'm learning and I'm paying attention and I'm conscious in ways that maybe I didn't allow myself, or maybe didn't put as much emphasis on previously. And so between one, making sure my priorities are still that priority, and making sure that how am I integrating that in my day. Secondly, finding opportunities just to be able to share it to the extent possible in different forms, be it thought leadership here or writing or otherwise. But third, also making sure that I'm doing enough listening and making sure I'm paying attention to what's around me and what's being said, and potentially what's not being said.
Yeah. It's so interesting you just talked about listening as well, because I think I just wrote I wrote a post somewhere on one of my channels or something. I write so many things and do so many things in just so many places, and I'm just not sure. But I wrote about how part of communication is a big part of communication is listening, and not just hearing, but actually listening to what someone is saying, whether they are verbalizing it or whether you can see it within their body, their body language is speaking to you. And when you're actually listening with your whole self, you get so much more information than when you're, how you doing? I'm doing great. Okay, we're on our way, right?
Right.
It's it's so much more than that,
Yeah.
And it's about being present, right? It's about being present for that person or that thing that you're doing, or whatever's happening. It's about being present there and actually experiencing that whole moment. Right.
Absolutely. And it's listening and I love the way that you even phrased it too, going from the listening of others, but also applying it to yourself and listening to your feeling and emotions. I often, when I'm talking to my clients and when I'm coaching them, one of the things that I ask them to do is to pause, process, and reflect, and to really be able to think and listen, think about what they did that week, but as important, listening to what they heard, but also to listening to what they felt. And to your very statement, you have to be present in that moment to acknowledge it, because when we're actually asked to do something different, we're now asking ourselves to think about things in a very conscious way. Because I think there's a stat out there that says, we make between 2,000 and 10,000 decisions each day, and 95% of those decisions are unconscious. Right. And so if we put that in context of what we do every day and trying to be conscious of something, that brings us to a whole new level of experience, of learning, of growth, of contribution. We're not then responding to what we want to say, right? We're responding in a way that's, oh, I heard you say this, or, ooh, I just felt this right now when you said that, and this is what resonated. And so that extends how we communicate with others and how we feel received.
Yeah. And that, I think, is a huge part of authenticity. When we're talking about authenticity, it's a huge part of simply being, listening, being present in that moment, and being, what are we saying? Intentional. Intention is something that I've come to, so in 2017, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point in time, I think I've been incredibly more intentional with the things that I do, the things that bother me, the way that I just do life, the people that I hang out with, all of the things have become so much more intentional, because so many things before that seemed so important now seem so trivial. And it's like, no, that's not as important as what's happening right now. Right?
Absolutely. And that experience where I was listening to some of your previous podcast recordings, so I was aware of that, and I'm glad to hear about the progress and recovery and everything else. But I think what's important about that, it reshapes how you think and how you experience life.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a traumatic experience, such as you described. Others, it's COVID-19. Others, it's I'm taking a proactive choice. What is consistent across that entire thread of however we got there, be it self-induced or induced by others or other things, we have a choice on what we do. And that's really what that intention is, on how we spend our time and where do we put our priority and where do we put our energy? Because last time I checked, no one comes back. We're not coming back.
As far as we know.
As far as we know. Now, I might feel like I have a kindred soul. I might feel like I've met somebody previously.
Exactly. You might have lots of deja vu.
Absolutely. And I don't, and it's not that I don't agree or believe in that, but what I do know is that no one has said, okay, I was once this and I came back. Right. So we have to use the best time we can now. And I've yet to meet anybody who wants to waste their time.
Right.
Now they might want to waste your time, but that's intentional too. But they don't want to waste theirs individually.
Right.
And I think as we're living with that intention, it's also, as you described as well, and when you have that purpose, you're now living to your authenticity.
Yeah.
We're now living with, what do I feel? What do I think? And that's a very personalized journey. And that, while it's personal, I also want to acknowledge that it also impacts others around you, right? In our environment and how we're interacting otherwise. So it's not to say that we do this by ourselves, but it is an individual journey. And so my book is around that journey, around that intention. And one of the very first parts of the book, the very first, is around discovery, is what is your purpose? What is it that you really want to achieve? What is your passion? And we have a lot. And what caused you to have that passion? And let's uncover that. And is it fear that we're not coming back? Is it fear because I have cancer and I've seen the possibility of passing? Have I lost a job? Have I now to say, we've gotten COVID-19 and now it's been thrust upon me? What is it? And now let's pull that back, because once I get to that point, I can now say I have a choice around how I'm going to live that purpose. I have a choice around how I can live that intention. And to the extent I don't, there's only one person who's accountable for that, and that's me. So how can we move forward in that respect? And so I appreciate you sharing that story, but it really lends us and gets us closer to that authenticity, our intention, and being the people and the person that we want to be.
Yeah, I love that, because one of the things that I like to coach people on is that not just finding your purpose, but finding your purpose and your passion and putting those together, and actually realizing that using your purpose and your passion together, you can affect social change where you are. And because my contention is that most people think that the system is huge. Corporations are huge. Industries are huge. But what we fail to understand is that we individually make up those organizations, make up those industries, make up those, corporations, right?
Right.
And so if we were to take what we have and to say, you know what, I want to use it in the area, I want to make a difference, I want to use it in the area of social justice, we could, because really it's woven into everything. And there's not one place that you will look that you will not find that that has not been impacted by, racism or social injustice or anything. And so when you talk about that, I said to myself, yeah, absolutely. We have a power that we discount.
Yes.
We sit back and we go, oh, but my job, my company does this, my industry does this, feeling like there's nothing we can do about it. And right?
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. We oftentimes we acquiesce that power, especially around things that we find difficult. We give it to somebody else to be responsible for without really stepping back and saying, now what power can I harness? And I want to separate that acquiescing of power in the context of I need help, a la a coach, similar to you or I, versus I expect somebody else to do this for me.
Right.
And so when we really put it in this context, and I like the way that you phrase it, even as we think about organizations, oftentimes we think about organizations as these boxes of which now we're being controlled by. And we've now hit a stride in a trend where we're no longer, and I say we as people are no longer accepting of the boxes of which we're now prescribed from our previous job titles, from the acceptance of the values that are no more valuable than the paper than they're written on because we're not living to them.
Right.
Or the rhetoric around our voices, our employees, are our greatest asset, when in fact, we're quickly pushed aside wherever the stock market changes.
Yeah.
And I think as we think about this idea of power and having that voice, it's really empowering ourselves to say, what am I willing to do? What am I willing to share? What am I willing to take hold? And realizing that social change is like trying to turn around a cruise ship, not a speedboat. It takes time, it takes effort, and it takes a lot of effort. And it just takes one person to have an positive impact on someone else. And they're feeling it, they're experiencing it. It's just not something written on a sheet of paper. And it's built in the fabric of who I am. And when you can start to weave that blanket together, that pattern together, you start to figure out and create something beautiful. And so I think we're in the process of doing that.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I think that we might be more optimistic than most people.
Yeah, well, it's funny. It's I'm optimistic because that's where we start to get our motivation from, right? Around the possibility. Do I believe that it's going to actually happen? I don't know, because I think the challenge that we're facing, and I think organizations are a good place, but you can apply it just about anybody, and that is, our world is often fraught with acknowledgement of our pasts, and how do we balance it, right? Yep. Between races and organizations, and how we even define patriotism in America. As we've gone down this road of increased transparency, we defined our past decisions that were successful and that have made us where we are, and now we're having to reconcile that past that maybe weren't as solid, or better yet, in the context of today, would definitely not go forward and not be acceptable. We're now looking and expecting people to do something different. We're now expecting to experience life in a way that is defined by the rules that we are creating as we go, versus the rules that have made people successful in the foundations of which they've been built. And so we get upset when we don't see those changes as quickly as we want. Right. And I think that's where people are less optimistic. It's the reason why you have as many whistleblowers that you're going to start to see, right? And people coming out with all these different investigations that we see across sports. There's going to be that proliferation of, you're not moving fast enough. You're not moving at the speedboat. You're still a cruise ship. And that does not mean we take people off the hook for and being accountable to help move this forward. But understand the game of which we are playing has changed. And that takes time, and it takes choice. It takes intention for someone to feel like they want to do something different before they actually start to do it. And then that's going to take time.
Right. Yeah. It's a long game.
Yeah. This is a long game.
Yeah. It's a long game. I don't expect it to, I expect to see incremental changes in my lifetime, but I'm hoping that there will be even more changes in my children's lifetime, and so on and so forth. So it's basically, kind of continuing to build on the foundation that those who came before us built for
Mm-hmm.
us to be able to do what we're doing now, to be able
Right.
to say what we're saying now, and to be able to have the privileges that we have now,
Mm-hmm.
because of the work that they did back then. And so it's just
Right.
kind of brick by brick, layer by layer, you kind of build it up, and
Mm-hmm.
there's always going to be pushback. You're always going to
Yes.
run into walls. There are always going to be things that are not changing as fast as you wish that they would change, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to understand it is a long game. Hey, thanks for listening. My name is Sedruola Maruska, and I help entrepreneurs and small businesses go from mediocre to magnificent by transforming their cultures to be more equitable and inclusive. To find out how we can work together, go to diversitydish.com, where you'll find my consulting, coaching, and speaker information. diversitydish.com. I look forward to working with you.
Absolutely. And I think there's going to be some new skills to be developed, right?
Yes.
I think in our world, in particular, one that comes to mind for me, and I was talking to someone about this recently, with someone I was coaching, from a leadership standpoint, is that we have to have a diversity of thought without the diversity of opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're asking people for their thought. We're asking people to say, yes, I want you to be authentic. And then when they are, you're like, oh, no, that doesn't work. Like, no, you can't say that. No.
Right.
Yeah, that word, or you can't have that opinion because it doesn't agree with mine, right?
Right.
So now it's a court of public opinion at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, how do we grapple with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do we strike that balance to make sure that we acknowledge the diversity of thought, while also acknowledging that can be an opinion? And so which one do you weigh, right? Because thought is different than an opinion, right? Here's what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should be changing a heck of a lot faster than we are.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thought might be, you need to do this. Now, okay, well, how do we strike this balance?
Mm-hmm.
Because now I'm asking my leadership to do this. And this guy I'm coaching is grappling with that. Like, I want their opinion. I want them engaged. I want them to be able to speak up. And I can't do everything I want. Like, again, we're changing a cruise ship here. It's one thread at a time, and we're not moving as fast, but we just didn't get here today. And so it's now, I want you to be able to say it, but also, okay, we need to rein certain things in, but it's also going to make people hide in certain respects, right? They're not going to be like, oh, well, they don't listen to me before, so why am I going to say anything? Or if I say this, I'm going to get ostracized because I shouldn't have that opinion.
Right.
And so how do you balance that? And I think that's something, and I'm just using a leader example as that's just recently came up, but I think we're all balancing that as we think about social media, and we're thinking about what we post, as we were just talking offline a little bit earlier. It's like, what do I post? Am I offending someone? Or you may not even realize that what you wrote today may offend somebody 6 months from now. Like, hold on, what? I didn't even intentionally do that. Like, what happened?
Right.
So it's something that we just have to think about, as I think about that exploration of who we are individually, who we are as a society, and how do we contribute to be our authentic selves without feeling as though we're hiding as well.
Right. Tell us about your book.
That's an easy question. Break it down. Well, intention really is intended to provide clarity and steps that transforms one's own personal story. And I wrote the book really to reinforce and build capabilities based off of research, my own personal experience individually, and my personal experience coaching. It's written in a story-based fashion, so people can easily read and flip through the book and kind of get through different parts of it. But in particular, the book has 5 parts. One based on discovery, as we talked a little bit earlier, just around understanding what your true passion and purpose is. The second is around the principle of you. So having that passion and purpose means nothing if we don't put it into the context or the acknowledgement of who am I? What am I willing to do? What characters am I bringing to the table? And really begins to ask people those clarifying questions to uncover and discover, not in a judgment way, but in a way that says, okay, in order for me to do my passion, I need to know who I am and where I'm starting from and what choices am I willing to make to get it. Mm-hmm. The third piece, it then leads itself to building a plan. The fourth is around creating an experiment or experimenting, doing it incrementally. So we can build it into the fabric of our lives and weave this into who we are. It also means letting certain things go as well. And then finally, the attunement piece, being able to step back and just offer some level of reflection at however shape that may take for us. For my audience and for the readers, I typically said just pause, process, reflect, go to a quiet place and just think.
Right.
God forbid you do that.
Oh my goodness.
And so it's really a book that when I originally wrote it for my clients as a quick reference guide when I wasn't there, really turned into what I have here. And it's a book that's intended to be experienced. It can be quickly flipped through, but it's one to really set aside time to say, how do I now want to live to my purpose and to my passion? And putting it into the context of who am I really reinforces our ability to create consistent habits and build capabilities for any situation, just not a particular milestone or event. And and at that point, that's when we start to begin to transform.
Right. And, in listening to that, it sounds to me like it is something that we would go through over and over and over again, because we're always evolving. We're always becoming, right? As our forever first lady says, becoming in her book. And I think about that a lot, in that we're constantly becoming. It's not a destination. It's like success. It's not a destination. It's the journey. It could be something as simple as, getting married. I remember when I was getting married and I thought to myself, well, I want to enjoy every step of this because I know that it is all in the process. It's not just about the day. It's not just about that event. It's like Christmas. It's not just about that day or that event. It's enjoying everything that surrounds it, everything that leads up to it, and savoring everything that happens, so that the culmination is just as great as the journey. But if you miss the journey, the culmination is not as fruitful or as juicy or as happy or as intense as you thought it would be, because you missed the whole journey. And so it's kind of the same thing with our lives. If we're taking this journey and we're constantly becoming, we're not becoming to get to a place where we're like, okay, now I have learned everything that I need to learn. I am the person that I am. It's not that, right? It's a constant, like, okay, this happened. What does this mean for me? And which choice am I making right now?
Right.
Depending on what is happening or where I want to go, or all those different things. And so I feel like your book is one that would need to be reviewed.
Yes.
On a regular basis.
It is. It's one that can be read the first time, and then it's offered and used as a reminder afterwards, as what do I need to be thinking about? And what should I be considering? And what have I typically glossed over? And to your very acknowledgement, it's one of the reasons why I intentionally put the word capabilities in the title.
Right.
Is because our capabilities are transferable to many situations. Our capabilities adjust with us. We sharpen them. Sometimes they get dull. Sometimes we let them go. Sometimes we need new ones. Our capabilities are there for and to help us achieve certain milestones or events. And as you described your wedding, that was a huge event, but there's so many capabilities of planning and communication and managing nerves and coordination, collaboration. Oh yeah, by the way, selfishness in certain ways. Hey, this is my day. Like, I don't know.
Actually, when I got to the day, I was like, if it's not done, it's not done. It's all good.
That's right. We're going to get what we got, because guess what? I'm already getting married. So it does not matter. But those capabilities are transferable to just about any situation. And our events change, our lives change, with or without our consent. But the reality is, if we have the capabilities, we're now prepared to address it and know where we're starting from. And so, as you know, to put a pin in this, This book is to be experienced and can be offered and used as a reminder as you move through the journey of life.
Well, I'm going to link it in the show notes so people
Okay.
will not say that they didn't know where to find it. So that,
Right.
so that, so they can pick it up for themselves and kind of run with it, so to speak.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about you, Ian. You are also I'm making a huge assumption, but you are a Black man.
Yes. Yes, I am.
And so tell us a little bit about your experience, like in terms of, on your journey. What are some of the things that you've experienced on your journey that have really shaped you or brought you to where you are now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that have really shaped who I am. And as we just described and talked about, the journey is never ending. And there's been a lot of different points throughout my life that have shaped the individual who I am today. And I know a lot more that are going to shape me even further in my life. I think there are three things that really, or four things that have shaped certain aspects of my life and certain milestones. I think one of the first was as a kid, I was fearful of judgment. I was fearful of speaking up. Heck, I was even described as shy, but it was probably more out of fear of not getting in trouble of saying something more so than being shy. And that, growing up in a Black household, obviously, it's like, hey, you talk and we're speaking when you're spoken to. There's certain rules, and obviously, as you're coming out into I'm going to air quote, a white world that maybe not understands how we talk and how we interact, that there isn't an allowance or any slippage if there's any misunderstanding, because there's so much consequence to that. So as such, one of the things that, as I made the decision as a 13-year-old to be a psychologist.
Oh, wow.
And to get my doctorate, actually, both of which I, title and degree did, that shaped my perspective, because it was easier just to be hidden in the background. It was easier just to not say anything and just be able to listen to other people and just be able to pay attention. That experience also shaped even where I went to college and the different places I went to college. Number one, I went to Morehouse. So for those who may not be familiar, obviously a historically Black college, all male. And while historically Black, and you would assume that 100% of the students are Black and 100% of the staff are Black. That was not true.
No.
There's diverse in there. Now it's probably 80% Black, but more so than probably people realize. But that experience shaped me on what, a diverse thought and reality looked like outside of growing up in a predominantly and categorically white area, and really shaped, how am I being seen? How am I being treated? And now from one environment versus another. And so that really shaped my perspective, and not only the diversity of race, but the diversity of thought, diversity of perspective, and inclusion. So I think those are two major milestones early in my life that really shaped who I've become. I think from a career standpoint, I've been really shaped through my clinical experience, having worked in a 24-hour lockdown ward, working with adults, and even working with adolescents. And really being able to see who people truly are. It offered a foundation for me to now going from a group that was just trying to be normal to a group of whom I coach, who are trying to expand beyond their current boxes that they've been placed in or others have placed them in.
Right.
It's given me a perspective of really understanding the importance of our background. It's the reason why in this book, I focus so much early on, the first two parts around discovery and the principle of you, because I know the importance of how that influences so much of who we are and what we do. And because of that experience as a clinician and then going into organizations, understanding what people really want, understanding that all people want to be better. I don't care who you are. It just may not be at work. It might be in someplace else.
Right.
In some places in life. That's okay. But the reality is everybody wants to be better, but everyone's definition and where their starting point of better is different. That experience as a clinician really shaped me as an individual as well. And one of the more recent things that has shaped me here later in my life has been writing this book, actually. While I just touched on it, but I do want to call out that when I originally wrote this, it was just me just trying to help my clients out, and things I found that they were really just tripping over early
Right.
on.
Yeah.
And I turned into an audiobook. So I started writing it for an audiobook. And when I heard myself, I was like, oh no, I can't send this out to anybody, because that same judgment, that same voice, that same kid, going back to the other, that milestone that I had as a kid, right? That shaped me of like, oh, you don't speak like unless you're asked to, or better yet, don't share your thoughts. I could hear that in the audiobook when I was actually talking. I could not only hear it in my voice, I can even hear it through the words that were written on the page, and that I wasn't my authentic self. And in that moment, I talk about it in the book because I was like, one, I'm not sending this out to anybody, because I'm not going to do that to myself or to them. But the decision I had to make was, if I'm actually going to write this book, and if I really want to help my clients and others, I have to open myself up in ways and being comfortable being vulnerable.
Yes.
Being comfortable acknowledging my authenticity and who I am, and not being fearful of any of that judgment. Yeah. And so once I made that decision, I opened myself up to becoming the author this book needed me to be. Not only am I the author, but I'm also the client through the experience firsthand, and being able to talk about that. And as such, that has been a huge milestone and a huge component of the story that I continue to create and write for myself through my own transformation and through my own intentions. And I think that speaks directly also to, from a diversity of thought, to a diverse person, so an African-American male, and even a male, just even writing about something like this, and which you see a lot more women writing books on self-help and otherwise, but really being open around the struggles and the challenges, and hey, we can get through this. So that's been kind of my story and journey in that respect, and making sure that I'm living to that authentic self. And as we talked about, our passion evolves, and that also means so does our authenticity. Yeah. And we have the right to make a decision today, but we also know we have a right to make a change tomorrow.
That's right. We can change our minds. Yeah. We are not statues. We are not trees. We can move.
That's it. And it also, I'm sure from your experience as well, when I'm coaching, my clients, both leaders and individuals, it now brings a certain level of experience, and not only from an education side, right? Having my clinical master's and a PhD in working with organizations, it's now a function of I'm living this, and I can tell you some of the roadblocks, but I can tell you my story, but let's put it into the context of yours, and help you manage your journey in a way that, one, builds a capability, so I'm not here forever, and then secondly, builds that thought process to move forward.
Right. So how did you switch from being in the background to now being in the forefront?
Oh, wow. I'm still doing that. I haven't gotten there yet. Well, it's interesting. It's been a journey, to say the least. When I started my business of Rhodes Smith Consulting, there's a reason I chose Rhodes Smith. One, I didn't want my name out there. I wanted to kind of hide.
Okay.
Right? So there was a certain level of fear going back to that judgment.
I was wondering about that.
But it also had had special meaning to me as well. So while I was hidden, now it won't be hidden. But the name Rhodes Smith is also a reflection of two things. Pays number one, homage to my family. So the matriarchs, grandparents on one side, the last name was Rhodes. Matriarch on the other side was Smith. Okay. So I want to make sure, from the history of what they and their peers and forefathers did for my parents, grandparents, etc., and me to be here today. And that always was going to be a personal and connection. The second thing around Rhodes Smith, and I'll delve into getting out front here in a moment, Rhodes Smith is, we all have our own roads of our own journeys of transformation, whatever that might be. And that road is individual. But we can bring people along that journey with us. But when we're transforming, it's our choice, it's our development. And so I wanted to at least acknowledge our own road. But in that road, it takes a lot of work when we're doing something different. It takes a lot of emotional toll, mental, physical. it takes work, no different than a blacksmith forging new metal. It takes a lot of heat to do so, and then forge it. Then it cools slightly, and then we ramp it back up. So I wanted to acknowledge the journey that we all go through our Rhodes and our Smith. So with that said, how did I get a long-winded way now back to how did I get now to being out front? And as I mentioned, still challenged with that. This book has really amped and provided me a platform to say, Ian, you now need to be out in front. Otherwise, I probably would not be as much as I clearly am now. With that said, and knowing that it was the right thing to do, but I probably could not do this on my own. In fact, I would not be able to do this on my own, is that I got a team to help me. Right? I said, okay, I know what should be done. Like I'm going to say, here's all the things that need to be done. But I need you to push me and remind me to do this.
Right.
I need your help to be out in social media and do the posts and do podcasts and even put this book out there and have my picture out there. Go to these book readings, go to these conferences, go and speak in front of people. Be reminded of that every single week, every single day. And they do. And that's one of what I pay them for. It's not always comfortable. It's not intended to be, but I know it's the right thing. And that discomfort allows me and tells me it's the right thing to do. So being out front, I don't think I'm there. But compared to where I was just 6 months ago, it's almost night and day. But it's still a journey and a process, one that tactically I'm getting and doing, being out front and getting more comfortable with. But I'm also still managing the emotional side and some of the angst that comes along with that, along that journey. And so I actually too am, using my own intention, using my own book and seeking instances every single day or every week to find how can I get out and speak more and do more and be present and live to my passion of being present, because it's not typically something I would normally do.
Something I think that people don't often realize how first of all, discomfort, a lot of people run from discomfort, especially when you start talking about equity and inclusion, and they're just like, oh my God, that just makes me so uncomfortable. I'm gonna run away from it. But they don't realize how much discomfort means growth, right?
Absolutely.
That you're growing through the discomfort. And I also don't think people realize how much vulnerability it does take to do some of the things that we do. So for me in my work, in order to be effective, I have to be willing to talk about how different things affect me personally, right? Because I am an individual. I cannot speak for everyone. I can speak for certain situations, but I can't speak for everyone who looks like me. But I need to be able to be vulnerable enough to say, look, this is how it affected me. And if that bothers you, if that makes you uncomfortable, that means that there's growth that needs to happen with you. And so now we're having this interchange where my vulnerability is not in vain, and neither is your discomfort, right? Because even if you feel uncomfortable, trust that the person who is having to bring forth the information also feels uncomfortable, right? So if both people can feel uncomfortable and stand in that discomfort and grow through that discomfort, that's where the real change happens, and that's where the growth happens. And that's where we want to be, where we're able to get through that and come through it closer, so that now when the next thing comes, because there will always be a next thing that's going to make you feel a little uncomfortable and a little bit vulnerable, but we can now navigate it better, right? We're just working towards getting to a place where we can navigate things easier, rather than people running to their corners and say, no.
Right. And like, this is it. And you're right. It's, and I think it's, obviously the context of our entire conversation, and that is just being conscious and open.
Right.
And the moment we turn ourselves off to the possibilities, to the vulnerability that we're going to experience or create for others, then we've lost an opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
We've lost an opportunity individually to expand ourselves and acknowledge who we are. We've also lost an opportunity as a society to take a next step. And so going back to the statement of, me being more positive than say some others around, the growth and diversity, et cetera, this is where the pessimism, and the kind of stepping back and saying, oh, I don't think it's going to work. Because in order for people to really take that next step, we have to be able to look ourselves in the mirror and say, and be honest.
Right.
And oftentimes when we're honest, we're actually looking back at things and judging ourselves and our histories in finality, as in we're defined by that truth. And I often tell my clients, use that place in the past as a place of reference, be it success or failure. Use that as a place of reference, not of resident. We can now move forward in that respect. But we have to be open. And if you're not open, then quite frankly, you're probably not likely going to evolve and grow. But if you do, it's going to be for an event and not over time.
Right.
And sustained.
Right. Not genuinely sustained. Absolutely. Yeah. You are absolutely right. So I appreciate everything that you've shared today. It's been, I think we've really covered a lot of ground, and the time has flown.
Yes.
Time has flown. So is there anything that we haven't touched on that you kind of wanted to bring out in this conversation?
Yeah, I think as for the audience, as we think about diversity, as we define it solely based, or most people look at it from gender and race and now ideas, we're looking for quick turns. And I think I want to reinforce the idea that as we think about diversity, we have to make sure that we maintain openness, because we're now undoing quite a bit of the fabric of our society, of our country, and even of ourselves that have been built around survival. And that survival, when you start to unwind it, will always start to fight back because it's so used to saying, no, you're hitting at the core of who I am or the core of who we are. And as we're seeing this on our day-to-day basis now with January 6th committee and obviously the polarization in our country now. So in that respect, as we think about diversity, let's remember to keep in mind that we're all trying to get better, that the openness that we carry is going to be very uncomfortable because we're actually asking ourselves and the people around us to change.
Yeah.
Give some leniency in that and be patient enough with them and yourself in that, because you didn't get here today. And guess what? We're not going to arrive there tomorrow either. So give yourself some leniency in that respect and realize that, you know what, the more consistent behaviors we can actually exercise and the more you start operating with some level of intent and consciousness around what's passionate, but also as we think about diversity and those around us, we'll find that we'll look up and be at a better place than tomorrow than we are today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have nothing to add to that. So Ian, before I let you go, I do have to ask you my signature question, the final question that I ask everyone, because you are on Diversity Dish. We've been dishing a lot about intention and authenticity and passion and all those things. But I just want to know, what is your favorite dish?
My favorite dish is my mom's mac and cheese. It has about 4 different cheeses in it. It's got cream of mushroom in it. It's got shells, and it carries about 4,000 calories.
It wouldn't be good mac and cheese if it didn't have a lot of calories. Okay,
you got that right. And you got that right, because if it doesn't carry that, it's not worth it. But no, it is absolutely extremely good. And so if that would be my last meal, that would be it, or at least a part of that last meal, because it's extremely good and can't have it all the time.
You still have to watch those arteries.
That's right. My significant other she may enjoy the food, but she may not enjoy me gaining that much weight. But no, it's but hey, that's diversity too. She'll learn to love me.
That's right. That's right. That's right. I love it. I love it. And you know that when it's from mom, it's made with lots of love.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yes, that is my favorite meal.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Ian, for being here with me on Diversity Dish. I have really enjoyed our conversation.
No, thank you for having me. Truly enjoyed our conversation as well, and look forward to chatting with you more.
Hey, did you enjoy that episode? If so, please leave a review. It would mean the world, but only if it's a good one and you really did enjoy it. In which case, it would be awesome if you help support my work over at patreon.com/Sedruola Maruska. And finally, before you go, don't forget diversitydish.com. I'd love to work with you. See you soon.